Thanks, Dad. Two simple words, soft as a breeze. But to me, they hit like a death sentence. It was my son, Ethan, who said them. But his eyes never turned to me. They turned to another man, the one sitting next to my ex-wife. Ethan's smile so bright, it erased me from the family picture in a single second. The whole hall stood, clapping, cheers rolling like waves. But for me, the sound drained away. I sat frozen in the crowd. Hands that once lived in engine grease now shook on my knees. I had pictured this moment so many times. My son graduating, me standing proud, clapping, his eyes searching the crowd, finding me. But today, the only man Ethan looked for, the only man he called Dad, was someone else. I bit my lip. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. Flashes of memory cut through me. A freezing winter night, me under a truck, just to earn enough for his first pair of basketball shoes. A rainy afternoon, carrying him on my back after a long game, his little legs too tired to walk. The way he once introduced me, innocent, proud. This is my dad. Now, all of it erased by just two words. Thanks, Dad. The other man nodded, placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder. Like a real father, my ex-wife, the woman who once shared my bed, smiled, clutched his hand. The three of them, a perfect family. And me? Just a ghost, a few rows back, unseen, unwanted, forgotten. The deepest pain wasn't Clara's betrayal. It wasn't losing my marriage. The deepest pain was my own son believing another man was more worthy to be called father. I bowed my head, tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but it wouldn't go down. The world blurred. All that remained was the crushing weight of loss, gnawing at me from the inside. In that moment, I knew my life had turned a corner, and it wasn't just about losing a family. It was the beginning of a silent war, a war to reclaim the place I should never have had to fight for. My name is Renner Carter, 40 years old. If you drive down the old road on the south side of town, you'll see a worn garage, paint peeling on the sign. That's where I spent nearly 20 years of my life. An old radio always playing country songs, the smell of oil thick in the air, my calloused hands, my only real wealth. I didn't have a college degree, no shiny business card, but I had a trade, and I had a family, and I once thought that was enough. I met Sarah when I was barely in my 20s. Back then, I was just a clumsy mechanic, clothes stained with grease, hair smelling of gasoline. She worked as a cashier at the supermarket near the shop. I remember the first time we spoke. She looked at me and laughed. "You know your face is covered in oil, right?" I panicked, grabbed a rag to wipe. She giggled. That laugh made me believe. Maybe even a poor mechanic could be worthy of love. We married in a small ceremony. No fancy dress, no diamond ring, just a thin silver band, and a whispered vow. "We'll be enough, Renner." And I believed it. I remember holding Sarah close, feeling the future open wide. Poor maybe, but rich in love. Then Ethan was born. I stood by the crib, his tiny hand gripping my finger. I whispered, "You'll never grow up lacking, like I did." 3 years later, Ella arrived. Her bright eyes, just like her mother's. Our small house overflowed with cries, laughter, little footsteps. That was the richest I'd ever felt. We had simple nights. I came home smelling of oil. Sarah handed me a cold beer. We'd sit on the porch, watching Ethan toss a ball, Ella with her dolls, her head resting on my shoulder. "Renner," she'd whisper, "this is enough." And back then, I believed it too. But my ambition grew. I wanted the garage bigger, wanted my kids to have more than I ever did. I took extra jobs, worked days, nights, and I started disappearing from home. Some nights I'd walk in, Sarah asleep on the couch, apron still stained with dinner, TV humming softly. I'd pull a blanket over her, whisper to myself, "Just a little longer. Once the garage takes off, everything will be fine." I didn't know what I was trading away. Ethan grew fast. He loved basketball. I remember him begging for a pair of Nike shoes, the kind all his friends had. I sold a car cheap just to buy them. When I gave him the box, his eyes lit up. He hugged me tight. "Thanks, Dad. I'll score so many points." I was so proud, I told everyone. But over time, those thank yous faded. He spent more time with friends, with his phone. When I called, he barely mumbled back. Ella stayed close. She'd run into the shop, play with bolts, ask me, "Dad, why do cars run?" "Because of the engine, sweetheart." "Then why does Mom always go out with Uncle Mark?" That innocent question froze me. I just forced a smile, ruffled her hair. When you're older, you'll understand. Yes, Mark. A name I never wanted to say. Sarah met him at a finance seminar. Came home with her eyes glowing. He can help us invest. We don't have to stay stuck with this little garage. I stayed quiet. I didn't trust investments, but I didn't want to crush her excitement. And then Mark showed up. At first, just about money. Then, gifts for the kids. A new basketball racket for Ethan. A collector's doll set for Ella. Thanks, Uncle, Ethan cheered. Something stung in me. I told myself, it's just manners. But after that, Ethan said his name more and more. One night, when I asked about his schoolwork, he shrugged. Uncle Mark helped me. He understands me better than you. The wrench slipped from my hand, clanged against the concrete. Sarah changed too, smiled at me less. Most nights, her chair at dinner sat empty. Out with friends, she texted, but I knew who with. I started to feel like a stranger in my own house. One evening, I came home early. Through the window, I saw Mark in the living room, his hand on Ethan's shoulder, showing him how to shoot. Sarah beside them, eyes glowing. I didn't go in. I stood outside, hands trembling. The home that once felt like my fortress suddenly felt like a place I no longer had the key to. That night, alone in the garage, staring at scattered tools, I whispered, I thought I was building a home with bricks and wood, but all I built were walls between us. And then I understood. I wasn't losing money. I wasn't losing the shop. I was losing my place in the heart of my family. But I still wasn't ready for the day everything would collapse. I had no idea that just months later, at Ethan's graduation, 2 simple words, thanks, Dad, would erase everything I once believed. I remember it so clearly. The first cracks weren't thunderclaps. They were small sounds, so small you could ignore them and lie to yourself that nothing was wrong. But from those small sounds, the whole house collapsed. One night, I came home late. The shop had a tough job, a truck with failed brakes. I couldn't just leave it. When I opened the door, the clock read 10. The house was silent. On the table, cold food. Sarah on the sofa, still in her work dress. Eyes on the TV, but not watching. I'm sorry, work ran late, I whispered. She didn't turn, just sighed. You're always late. I sat down, picked at the cold meat, chewed without taste. Sarah stood, cleared the dishes. Her voice soft, but cold. Ethan won his first game tonight. He waited for you, then went to bed. I froze. I didn't know. You should have called. For what? You wouldn't be here anyway. That simple sentence knocked the air out of me. That night, I lay beside her, reached out, touched her shoulder. She brushed me away, turned her back. Silence heavier than any fight. Not long after, Mark started showing up more. One day, I took Ethan to practice. Mark was already there, holding a brand new basketball. Here, try this, official NBA size. Ethan's eyes lit up. He hugged the ball tight. I stood there, clothes stained with grease, oil still on my hands. Forced a smile. Good job, son. But inside, a storm rose. Since when? Was my gift never enough? On the way home, I asked Sarah, you okay with Mark giving him presents all the time? She adjusted the mirror. Didn't look at me. He's just trying to help. You're too suspicious. I stayed quiet, but thought to myself, sometimes suspicion is just the truth we already see. Another night, Ethan sat at the table doing homework. I walked over. Need any help? He looked up, calm. Uncle Mark already showed me. He understands me better than you. His pen tapped the notebook, each knock like a hammer. I froze. My throat locked. Forced a smile. Nodded. Walked back to the garage. In the dark, I whispered, the sound of a wrench hitting concrete is softer than my son's words. But the pain didn't stop there. One weekend, we sat down for dinner. Mark was there too. I didn't want it. But Sarah said, he's like family. Ethan was excited, talking about practice. He turned to Mark. Uncle Mark. The table froze. I stared at my son. He blushed, lowered his head. Mark laughed it off. Sarah coughed. Changed the subject. I swallowed the meat whole. Bitter. Only 2 letters echoing in my skull. Dad. That night, I couldn't sleep. I realized I was losing more than a wife. I was losing the boy I once held, the boy I swore to protect forever. While Ethan drifted away, Ella stayed close. One evening, she sat in the garage, playing with bolts. Dad, she whispered. Yes, sweetheart? Mom and Uncle Mark. They go out a lot. She laughs with him, but I don't like it. I'm scared one day she'll make me call him Dad. I froze. Didn't expect my little girl to see that far. I held her tight. Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'll always be your dad. But deep down, I knew her fear could come true. Soon after, Sarah and I exploded. You don't see how much you've missed, Renner? Her voice tired, no longer shouting. I worked for this family, I said, trying to stay calm. What family? I don't recognize you anymore. I live with your shadow. I went numb. Ethan stood on the stairs, eyes distant. Ella clutched her teddy, hiding in the corner. I wanted to speak, but my lips trembled. No words came. I walked out, sat in the garage, listened to rain pounding on the roof. One thought ringing. I gave everything to hold this family together, but maybe I'm the reason it's falling apart. One night, clearing the table, I noticed an envelope on the sofa. No name. I opened it. Inside, papers. My eyes caught the bold letters. Petition to change custody rights. My heart pounded. Before I could turn the page, keys rattled at the door. Sarah and Mark walked in, laughing. I shoved the envelope into the drawer, kept my face steady. But inside, a storm was rising. The cracks were no longer drops of water. The whole roof was about to collapse. Since the night I saw those bold letters. Petition to change custody rights. I haven't slept in peace. Long nights, staring at the dark ceiling, asking myself, when did I lose my family? I took the papers down to the garage, spread them under the yellow light. The name Mark Morgan stood out, as the proposed guardian. With every clause I read, my hands shook harder. Each line felt like someone drawing a red mark, crossing out my life. That night, Sarah slept soundly. I watched her face in the hallway light. For a fleeting moment, I saw the girl who once sat with me on the porch, cheap beer in hand, whispering, Renner, this is enough. But the shadow of that memory vanished. The moment I looked at the envelope in my hands. The next day, I offered to drive Ethan to practice. He shook his head instantly. No need, Dad. Uncle Mark's taking me. I forced a steady voice. But I want to see you practice. You're always busy. Maybe next time. Next time. The words cut deep, like a period at the end of my story, spoken in my own son's careless tone. Ella glanced at me, then ran up, grabbed my hand. Dad, I still want you to take me to cello class. I bent down, hugged her tight. If not for her, I might have collapsed right there. At the big game, I arrived early, sat in the bleachers, Sarah and Mark in the front row, looking every bit like husband and wife. When Ethan scored, I jumped up, clapped until my palms stung. But he ran straight to Mark. High-fived him. Around me, people whispered, that must be his dad. Looks sharp. I bowed my head. When Ethan left the court, I walked over, forced a smile. You did great, Ethan. He hesitated, handed back the bottle of water I'd packed. Uncle Mark already brought me one. I froze, still clutching the cold bottle, as he walked away with Mark. That was the moment I knew. I had lost. On my own son's court. That night, I couldn't hold it in. I confronted Sarah in the kitchen. She was rinsing glasses. I know. You plan to file for custody, don't you? She jumped, almost dropped the glass, silent, then sighed. Renner, I just want the kids to have a better future. Better, by erasing their father? My voice cracked. She looked down into the sink. For a moment, I saw tears in her eyes. But then she clenched her jaw, turned away. Were you ever really here? When Ethan needed you, you were in the garage. When I needed you, you were in the garage. I'm tired. I went numb. At the door, Ella clutched her teddy, eyes wide. I gave a small nod, motioned her upstairs. I couldn't let her watch us tear each other apart. That night in the garage, I held the papers, gripped them so tight the edges cut blood from my hand. In my head, I heard Mark's voice. We can make it official. The boy can take my name. Rage boiled. I slammed my fist on the table. Metal rang sharp. For a second, I wanted to scream, to smash everything. But then Ella appeared at the door, holding a small lunchbox. Dad, you haven't eaten. I brought you something. I dropped the papers, swallowed hard, forced a smile. She left, her tiny frame fading into the dark. I sank into the chair. Tears wet my lips. Without Ella, I would have lost control. Another night, passing the living room, I heard Mark whisper to Ethan, if you want, we can file the papers. You'll be Ethan Morgan. I pressed my back to the wall, holding my breath. Ethan paused, then said quietly, I'll think about it. My heart crashed to the floor. Not just custody. I was losing my bloodline. Even our name. The next day, I found Sarah alone in the living room, her eyes blank. I sat across from her, silent. After a long pause, she whispered, "Renner, I don't even know if I'm doing the right thing." My chest clenched. I almost reached for her hand, but her phone lit up. "The name Mark." She answered. Her face changed in an instant. I sat there, silent, defeated again. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled out the envelope, turned to the last page, and saw the line that froze me. The signature. Ethan Carter, signed in agreement. The letters blurred in my eyes. My son had written away his own name, crossed out Carter, with his own hand. I collapsed into the chair, my chest heavy as stone, the whole world crumbling, from a boy's shaky, careless signature. And I knew, if I did nothing, by tomorrow, he would no longer be Ethan Carter, and I would no longer be his father. Ethan's graduation day came. I sat in the back row, old white shirt, wrinkled, tie frayed at the edges. Sarah and Mark sat in the front, elegant, shining like a picture-perfect couple. I told myself, it's fine. Today is my son's day. As long as he's happy, I can endure it. Then they called his name. Ethan walked the stage, blue gown, diploma in hand. I jumped up, clapped hard, but his eyes never searched for me. He bowed, smiled, radiant at Mark. I froze, palms burning red, but empty. In my head, a line from the letter I'd written echoed, "Son, I'm not rich, I'm not brilliant, but every bolt I've turned, every drop of sweat I've shed, carried your name." I knew it was time. When Ethan stepped down, I walked forward, handed him a small box. "Congratulations, son, this is from me." He hesitated. Sarah frowned. Mark sneered. Ethan took the box, but didn't open it, slipped it into his gown, turned away. I sat back down, my chest heavy as stone. The ceremony neared its end. The MC called outstanding students to speak. To my shock, Ethan was chosen. My heart raced. He thanked the teachers, the friends, the usual words. Then he paused, hands trembling, opened the box. The letter appeared. He looked down at the front row. Sarah shook her head, eyes warning, "Don't." Mark muttered under his breath, ready to move. The hall fell silent. Ethan drew a deep breath. "I want to read a letter." He unfolded the page, scanned the shaky handwriting. His lips trembled. Sarah rose. "Ethan, don't." Mark leaned forward, half standing. My chest clenched. Every eye turned to my son. And then he stepped back, raised the letter high, stared straight at Mark. "This is from my dad." His voice shook, but rang clear. He wrote, "He once sold a car just to buy me my first pair of basketball shoes. He remembered the rainy night he carried me home, both of us soaked, but laughing." The whispers in the hall died out. Sarah covered her mouth. Mark froze, rooted mid-step. Ethan's voice broke, but pressed on. He wrote, "Son, maybe one day you'll forget. But for me, every moment was my whole life. If you think I'm not good enough, not rich enough, remember this. I never gave up on being your father." My vision blurred. My calloused hands trembled. The whole hall held its breath. Mark stood, ready to march forward. Ethan lifted the letter like a shield. "You can't replace this. You can buy me things, but you can't buy these memories." Mark froze. Sarah burst into tears. And then Ethan turned, looked straight at me. His voice cracked like thunder. "He is my father, and I am Ethan Carter, always." Applause exploded, roared through the hall. I sat stunned, tears spilling. Ethan's eyes locked on mine, bright. No more distance. From the crowd, I heard Ella's voice. "Ethan, Dad!" And in that instant, I saw my boy's smile. The same smile he had in the garage years ago, holding those basketball shoes. I knew then I'd been given back the one title that mattered most. Dad. Ethan stepped down, ran into my arms. He clung to me. I held him tight, afraid if I let go, he'd vanish forever. Through my tears, I saw Mark standing frozen, face flushed red, Sarah wiping her tears, her eyes torn. But in that moment, they disappeared. It was just me and my son, locked together in front of the world, as applause thundered around us. And I realized the greatest twist was never Sarah's betrayal. Not the custody papers, not the stolen name. The real twist was my son's choice. to stand with me, to call me father, before everyone. The applause from graduation still echoed in my head. But as I held Ethan, I knew the storm wasn't over. Sarah stood silent, eyes red. Mark, face flushed, jaw clenched, marched straight toward us. He leaned close, hissed through his teeth. "You had no right turning this ceremony into a cheap stage." I kept my hand on Ethan's shoulder, answered slow. "I didn't force anything. My son chose to read." Ethan nodded, eyes locked on Mark. Sarah touched his arm, whispering, "Not here, everyone's watching." We left the hall in heavy silence, but I knew this wasn't finished. That night, Sarah called me to the house. "Just to talk," she said. The table was set, but no one ate. Ella stayed upstairs. Ethan sat beside me, diploma still in his hands. Sarah finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "Renner, what you did only made things worse. You're confusing him." I gave a bitter laugh. Confusing? I only reminded him who's been there since the start. Confusion is when another man walks in and tries to erase his name. Mark slammed his palm on the table. The dishes rattled. "You can't give him what I can. I give him a future. Opportunities? All you have is grease under your nails." Ethan shot up, his voice trembling, but sharp. "I don't need a wallet. I need a father." The room went silent. Sarah covered her mouth, tears streaming. Mark glared, but said nothing. She sank into her chair, head in her hands. "I never wanted this. I just thought you were too absent. I needed someone who was here." My throat tightened. "So you erase me? From our son's life? Erase the name Carter?" She trembled. Didn't answer. For a moment, her eyes wavered, as if something inside her still remembered. But then Mark rose, cold, defiant. Ethan placed his diploma on the table, his voice steady. "I've made my choice. I am Ethan Carter. If anyone forces me to change my name, I'll leave this house." The kitchen froze. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. Sarah sobbed. Mark stiffened, fists clenched. The moment stretched forever. I felt like I had lost everything, and gained it all back at once. Finally, Mark turned to me, his voice low, venomous. "Fine, but you'll pay. Court doesn't care about tears in some greasy garage. I'll see you there. And next time, no letter will save you." He shoved his chair back, stormed out. Sarah hesitated, started to follow, then froze at the door. She turned back, looked at me and Ethan, eyes torn apart, then buried her face in her hands, crying. I sat in silence, arm around my son. As the door slammed so hard the frame shook. No one spoke after, only the sound of Sarah's spoon trembling against porcelain. Ethan stayed beside me, gripped my hand tight, warm, steady, as if pouring all his strength into me. I looked at him, choked inside. This boy once hugged me for a pair of old shoes. Now he stands for me, against his own mother. I've lost so much, but at least I haven't lost his heart. 2 days later, Mark came to the shop. No polished smile, just cold eyes. "You think you won? That little stunt at graduation changed nothing. The law is on my side. I have money, connections. You? Just rusted wrenches." I dropped my rag, looked him dead in the eye. "You're right. I only have rusted wrenches. But I have one thing you'll never buy. Memories. You can buy gifts, houses, schools. But you can't buy the sound of my son calling me Dad." He narrowed his eyes, smirked. "We'll see, in court." Then he turned, left behind the stench of expensive cologne, mixing with the oil-soaked air of my garage. That night, after putting Ethan and Ella to bed, I heard a truck stop outside. The mailman handed me a large envelope. Red seal. I tore it open. Summons, custody hearing, date. I froze. The paper shook in my hands. The world fell silent. In the small house, I could hear my children breathing in their sleep. And I knew the real fight had only just begun. The night I got the summons, I sat alone in the garage. Yellow light stretched my shadow across the concrete floor. The paper lay on the table. Custody hearing, printed in bold, cold as a knife. I thought I would collapse. But then I looked up. Ethan, fast asleep on the sofa, his graduation gown still draped across him. Ella, curled beside me, her little head resting on my arm, breathing soft, steady. And I knew no court could ever strip away the word Dad from their lips. The next morning, I drove them to school. On the ride, Ethan was quiet, then finally whispered, "Dad, I know it's going to be hard, but I won't change my name. I'm a Carter." I couldn't speak. I just placed my hand on his shoulder. Sometimes, one short sentence carries more weight than 100 verdicts. That afternoon, Sarah showed up at the shop. No makeup, no fancy dress. She set a lunchbox on the table, her eyes wandering. "I don't know if I was right or wrong," she said softly. "Maybe. I let Mark take too much. Renner, sometimes I miss those nights. Just a porch and 2 cheap beers." She stopped, hesitated, then turned away. I stayed silent. The wound was still there, but at least I knew regret lived in her too. That night, I cooked instant noodles. The 3 of us sat around the old wooden table, spoons clinking against bowls, rain tapping on the tin roof. Ethan ate slow. Ella slurped loud. Then suddenly, she looked up, her clear eyes shining. "Dad, someday I'll write you letters too, so you'll never be forgotten." I froze. My heart caught in my throat. Ethan glanced at her, then at me. A small smile tugged his lips. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need trophies, didn't need certificates, didn't need anyone's approval. All I needed was a hot bowl of noodles, 2 kids beside me, and the word Dad whispered on a rainy night. I once thought a home was built from wood, brick, and cement. Now I know. A home lives in memories, in the hearts of your children. I may have lost a wife. The family may never be whole again. But I never lost the right to be a father. And no court can take that away. I whispered, like a prayer. I once thought I was just a small-town mechanic. But when my children call me Dad, that's the sweetest verdict of my life. Tonight, Ethan sleeps on the couch. Ella clings to me. I sit still, listening to the rain outside, and feel a quiet fire burning warm inside. Tomorrow, the court can decide whatever it wants. But tonight, right now, I know this. I still have a family. Not perfect, but enough. Enough to keep me living. Enough to keep me standing. Enough to keep me, Dad.